This screencast supports this lesson on phrases of addition, result and contrast. So they're linking words and phrases that we use in sentences. The materials come from Language to Go Upper Intermediate by A. Clare and J.J. Wilson, published by Longman. Okay, so the lesson starts with some vocabulary and speaking about the different aspects of friendship. And there are 3 photos here. They need updating, but the idea is there. So it says, describe the different aspects of friendship illustrated in the photos. So they could have a look at that first. Alternatively, you could do your own short lead-in, which is more personalised to your students if you wish. Then, once they've discussed the photos, you can move on to exercise 2, which is complete the diagram with the words in the box. So these are all words that contain the word mate or friend, and different words in the box and gapped descriptions. So do an example with them and get them to complete each gap with one of the words from the box. Then you can do some concept checking to check some of these further. Which ones do you think might be new to them? So check the meaning and do some drilling of any that you feel are tricky to say. Exercise 3 links that language back to the people in the photos, and it says use some words from the previous exercise to describe the people in the photos. And then there's a nice discussion activity which is more personalised and asks the students to think about their friends and different situations that they may have been in with their friends. Once they've done that, they can move on to this listening. So they're going to listen to a man called Chris Johnson talking about friendship. Give the listening some context. So perhaps show a picture of a man and say, this is Chris Johnson. What do you think his job is? He's actually a counsellor, so you could put some visual clues in your picture if you want to. And he's going to be interviewed about the topic of friendship. It's also very helpful to pre-teach at this stage some vocabulary that may help the students understand the text further. So I've looked through the text and there are 4 or 5 words that I think are worth pre-teaching before they listen. I'd say socialise, lack of, turn to someone, get on top of someone, as in a problem gets on top of you. The verb to bond, and in the flesh. It's quite a nice one for them to learn. So you could create a matching task where they match the words or phrases with their definitions, for example, to check the meaning. And don't forget to deal with any pronunciation through drilling if you think that would be helpful for them. Now you can give them 3 questions that they need to answer when they read the text for the first time. So just give them 30 seconds or so to read through these 3 questions, and then they can listen or read, depending on how you're doing it, and answer the questions. Once they've done that, they can peer check, get some feedback, and show them some answers on the slide. Then they're going to listen or read again, depending on whether you're approaching this text as a listening or reading. And this time they're going to complete the sentences. Okay, the book says look at the recording script on page 116 to check your answers. If you're doing it as a listening, you can just elicit the answers and check the answers with them making sure, of course, that once they've listened or read a second time, filled in the gaps, peer checked, then you get your feedback and make sure that they can see all the answers. This is very helpful here because it will contain the language that we're going to analyse next in the lesson. So now that they've completed the sentences from the listening, they have these linking words and phrases in context. They have them in a sentence relating to a topic that they've already thought about and discussed. So now we're going to analyse these more closely. So number 7 says, put these linking words and phrases under the correct headings. So we've got 3 headings. We've got contrast, result, and addition. And these are the linking words and phrases that we want them to put into the correct column. So instead of giving them these, I would elicit one for contrast, one for result, one for addition, to make sure that they are clear on what they need to do, and then tell them that you'd like to put the rest of the phrases into the column, and after that, that you would like them to answer the questions in question 8. I would slightly reorder these questions and make number 2 the first question here, because it relates to meaning, formality, whereas the other 2 questions, 1 and 3, relate to form, where in the sentence the phrases go. So I would tell the students, I'm going to put you into small groups and I would like you to put the phrases into the correct column. And when you've done that and you're happy, I would like you to talk together some more and answer these 3 questions. I'd give them about 10 minutes to do this and then call everybody back and get some feedback. Any that you feel that need further checking from your monitoring, use some concept checking questions. Perhaps they've put them in the wrong column. It's also really useful to think about formality. So, things like which phrase of addition would we use when we're speaking? So to, as well as also as well. So we'd use all of those when we're speaking. Could also use them when we're writing. But then, would we use nevertheless when we're speaking? No, we probably wouldn't, because it's quite formal. Of these, I'd say although is the one we'd use more when we're speaking. So it's useful for students to know the difference between the language we use when we're speaking and more formal language, which is mostly only used when we're writing, for example. Once you're happy that they're really clear on meaning and form, don't forget to drill some of the tricky ones. And it might be worth drilling them in a sentence so that they can hear the language in context. Think about things like word stress, for example, nevertheless, stress on the last syllable, weak sounds, as well as, as well as, and a classic although, very, very hard for students to say. We've got all and the O. It's a really tricky word here. The sentence with although in it from the listening is quite a long sentence, so you'd need to shorten it to drill it in context, okay? Try not to drill sentences which are really, really long. And remember to not show the sentence while you're drilling, but to just get the students to focus on you and repeat what you're saying and listen to how the words link together and anything else that happens when they're put into a sentence. So now it's time for some practice. They're going to read a text about the Samaritans and underline the correct alternative. So which linking word or phrase fits best in the sentences? And of course, you know, they can refer back to what you've done earlier with them, think about the rules and decide which one goes best. They can do this on their own and peer check before feedback, or you could get them doing it together as a group, okay, or in small groups. As always, before they do this, it would be nice to just show a photo, perhaps, of a Samaritan at the end of a phone line, and just elicit a few ideas to make sure that they do know what the Samaritans are before they start doing the activity. While they're peer checking, monitor carefully and listen out for any difficulties that they've had doing this task, and address those in feedback. Do make sure that they can see the correct answer and that by the end of feedback they're clear on why it's one answer rather than another. Now they've done some controlled practice, it's time for some freer practice. So this is a nice activity where they need to discuss the pros and cons of different situations using the target language, the linking phrases, okay? So they need to be put into two groups, Group A and B. Group A are going to discuss and make notes on the pros of the situation, 4 situations here, and Group B are going to discuss and make notes on the cons of the situation. So do check they understand the difference between pros and cons. You might want to elicit a synonym, advantages and disadvantages, and elicit a couple of examples for the first one. So for example, making friends on the internet, elicit 1 pro and 1 con. Tell the students you're going to put them into 2 groups and to make as many notes as possible on these 4 situations, and that they must use some of the linking words and phrases from the lesson. So it'd be a good idea to have those up on your slide to remind the students that they absolutely need to use that language in their notes and discussions, okay? Monitor the discussions while the students are talking together and make some notes on good examples of linking words and phrases that you hear and some incorrect examples. And then call everybody back into the main room and the students can have a discussion about their ideas. Once they've done that, you can put some correct and incorrect sentences up on a slide that you've heard from their discussions and get the students together to firstly identify the incorrect sentences and then to correct the incorrect sentences. Try and keep the focus on the linking words. And that will be the end of the lesson.